Hello, everybody. We're waiting a bit for people to join us here in the side chat. I know that Bree is still going right now, so hopefully her crew will be over here in a few minutes. Let me just put a little thing over there so people know to come over. And starting to get some people showing up. Awesome. So today is probably going to be a little bit shorter of a show. We're doing the recap of 2025, and there is a live poll in the audience right now. So please be sure to click on that. Um, but we're going to kind of go over all the things that we've talked about this past year, and we're going to see which one comes out as the worst medical myth of 2025. So here we go. Let's pull up our bracket. So we had a pretty good year here on the channel, although I did take a bit of a hiatus during the summer and into the early fall. So we could have done probably a lot more shows on this channel, but we ended up with 11 of these shows that are really worth putting into this tournament bracket here. So these polls were live on the post page on my channel. All of the bracket winners were selected from the live polls on the post page. So this was not my ranking. This is the ranking from those in the audience and the community that have answered the polls. So that is what we're going off of. And we have our completed bracket here down to the final two. So we're going to get into that and talk about all of that. So, oh, and there's the dog being super loud. All right. So we have over here in the top, let's start with the kind of uh, less notable ones. So we had the Bloom greens powder thing, which I actually did as a challenge kind of to myself, but also to try out, see how that works. If none of you are familiar, this is the supplement powder that a lot of TikTok influencers were using, and they are often sponsored by this. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Miranda. Thank you for being here. Yes, please leave your vote. Much appreciated. But the Bloom powder, if I can switch, I just go to the website. Bloom Nutrition, the company. Here we go. Switch to share that screen. All right. This was the Bloom's the here we go. This was the Bloom Greens powder. The sponsors a lot of influencers, and the claims that they were trying to make was that this is number one, a superfood. Number two, that this is helpful for getting more energy, even some extreme claims as weight loss, all that kind of stuff. And going through a dietitian's review during this main episode, we learned that it really doesn't even meet the criteria of providing adequate servings of vegetables and fruits. It doesn't really provide any health supplements to a meaningful degree. It's very similar to if you had a fraction of the amount of vegetables that you would normally eat, and it comes at a price tag of $35. And that's a markdown from the usual $40 for a 30-day supply. So it delivered, or it gave a lot of claims, but it didn't deliver on any of them. And so Bloom was determined to be a myth, or at least the claims that they brought to the table were determined to be myths. But Bloom was up against a pretty tough competitor for the spot on the bracket, as we see. We had, and the seeds were generated randomly, so this wasn't. I didn't intentionally pick which spot on the bracket these were all going to end up in. I know we had one of the corners down there where they were significantly overlapping. Um, but like overlapping as in like the measles and the vaccines cause autism thing. Like we had a very overlapping topics. But Bloom was up against Tylenol causing autism, and I'm sure you all remember that how all of that went down not too long ago. Sorry, the dog is getting a little bit hyper, but here, let's go to the Tylenol. So this is from the article from the HHS back in September. So just to jog everyone's memory about what this was, I'm sure it won't take much jogging to remember this one. But this was the myth from back in September 22nd, 2025. Um, RFK Jr. had announced that they were going to do the studies to make the proof that Tylenol causes autism. There was a press conference from President Trump himself, and along with Dr. Oz and RFK Jr., where they stood up and said Tylenol's bad, okay, especially if you're pregnant, so don't use it. And there really is no there isn't even a correlation between Tylenol use in pregnancy and autism prevalence. The studies that were done had shown that, especially when you take into account twin studies, sibling studies, that there is more of a genetic component than this Tylenol announcement would suggest. So when you have sibling studies, you have pretty similar genetic makeup. And so if you're going to have like different exposure but similar genetics, you're more likely to notice uh, genetic components being shown within those siblings anyway, even if the amount of exposure wasn't there. So that's something to really consider with this. But this was in general just a very, uh, very annoying myth. And there's a lot of real harm that came from this. This wasn't just another silly thing that the administration has done, right? So, number one, we have the issue of the claim that something outside of the body, something outside of genetics causes autism. It has been used to victim blame the autistic community. It has also been used to uh, try to bring some eugenics arguments to the table as far as autism being something to be cured or to be prevented, instead of treating this like a variation of normal, which it is. So that's one facet of this. The other facet was that Tylenol is one of the few safe pain medications to take in pregnancy. And so saying that Tylenol causes autism specifically during pregnancy, that is taking away one of the few medication options available to people who are pregnant. And so that especially is something that is unacceptable, and putting this into onto the list for the worst medical myths of 2025. So let's get back to our bracket here. Share. Let's see how the polls are doing so far. We have some votes from the horizontal side. We've got the anti-trans medical education in the lead so far. Uber vaccines cause autism. Let's see what we have on the vertical side. We have 100% vote for uh, anti-trans medical education. So we'll see at the end of the stream what direction that's gonna go in. But all right, so the next on the list, I know it's kind of hard to see this, so let me zoom in a little bit more. There we go. Okay. So the next thing we're adding on to the bracket there, we had Tylenol causing autism moving forward to the next phase of the tournament. And then we get into one of my, I guess, like the myth was kind of established before this particular story. But this was an implementation of like applying this myth to society that made it extra bad in my opinion. Um, so this was a story of Washington State University, and then I believe a university in Michigan also kind of jumped on this bandwagon, trying to teach medical professionals through CME programs transphobic propaganda. And so this was under the guise of teaching them evidence based healthcare for the trans community. That is not what was being taught. It was a lot of teaching people that gender affirming care is bad, that minors can't consent to this therapy and all that stuff. So this was especially diabolical from this past year, taking something that directly goes against and contradicts the medical consensus for multiple organizations, right? We had the AAFP statement, we had the AAP statement, ACP, AMA, AOA, and more organizations that have pretty much unanimously agreed that gender affirming care is evidence based medicine. It is life saving, and we need to have ways to provide this fairly across the board for trans people with easy access to this type of care. So, this university that should have been teaching evidence-based medicine, and it's from a state school, like a state medical school, Washington State University specifically, which from a blue state is also kind of odd. Granted, I don't know which campus of Washington State this was, or if it was in a more rural area or more red area. I'm not entirely sure. But regardless, you had a public university teaching medical professionals and future medical professionals about um, untrue claims about medicine and contradictory statements to the medical consensus. So that pretty reasonably puts the transphobic medical education up on this list. And you all agreed. What was the? Let me pull up the percentages for that one. So it was a split of 87% voted for anti-trans medical education to move through to the next round, and 13% saying Tylenol causes autism moving into the next round. So that puts the transphobic medical education into the semifinal bracket there. Down at the bottom, in on the left hand corner, we had just one match going since we had an odd number bracket, but we had the carnivore diet versus chiropractic. And the carnivore diet, if you remember, this is a diet uh, endorsed by Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson and similar alpha male type people claiming that plant matter is bad for you and that actually humans were meant to consume only animal matter. This was a diet that I ended up trying to do myself, and I did not even make it a full day because of how awful I felt. But there are plenty of people that continue to do this with this primal mindset. And the truth is, humans weren't meant to do anything. If anything, if we're looking at the evolutionary background of hominids, we have omnivorous characteristics. We have the ability to eat animal matter and plant matter. And in fact, most humans are meeting their optimal nutrition goals consistently by having a varied and omnivorous diet. So, my personal opinion and my professional opinion is that restricting food groups can often be more difficult to sustain and more difficult to be healthy with, just in general. But of course, there are certain diets that are more restrictive that can still get you a lot of the nutrients that you need. For example, vegetarian diets can still be very healthy and also do take away a particular category of food. However, within that, within vegetarianism and veganism, you're still able to maintain adequate nutrition. You're still able to get protein sources, carb sources, fat sources, and you can still get all of your complete proteins. You can get all of your necessary vitamins and minerals. Sure, with a vegan diet, you may need to supplement vitamin B12 a little bit more, but you can get that from things like nutritional yeast. There are sources for that. So if you're going to take away a certain category of food, one that still allows you to meet your nutrition goals easy is a better way to go. Like Aunt Jura is saying in the side chat, carnivore diets are fine if you don't like pooping, and that is valid. Yep, the biggest thing that I found that was a problem with the carnivore diet is the fact that you're getting basically zero fiber. And the carnivore purists, if we remember, advocated against eating or drinking any kind of plant matter. So we're talking sugars, but we're also talking coffees, teas. We're talking fiber supplements. We're talking pretty much zero access to fiber if you are doing uh, the purest form of that diet. Of course, there are people that aren't doing that necessarily. Even Jordan Peterson himself didn't do a pure carnivore diet, at least not long term. His particular variant on the carnivore diet is the steak and it's like a steak and salt diet. But he even goes for I think a month or two on a strict carnivore and by like a super strict steak and salt diet, but then we'll add in greens in the next couple months. Like he'll eat spinach, which there you go. That's a way to add some plant nutrients and fiber, which is very important. Um, the proponents of carnivore, as we discussed in the full episode, believe that the lack of fiber isn't really a concern and that your body will just adapt. But we also pointed out some very problematic things with regard to how extreme of a ketogenic diet that is as well. So, plenty of concerns with carnivore. I would not do it. I mean, I did it for almost a full day. I would not do it again. I would not recommend it for really anybody. So that's why carnivore has made it onto this bracket. But on the other side of carnivore, we have carnivore versus chiropractic. And I believe the percentages for uh this particular match was a 59-41 split. So the carnivore diet got 41% of the vote and chiropractic got 59% of the vote, which if we remember the chiropractic discussion, we looked at some TikTok chiropractors who likes to claim that they can determine all your problems from x-rays that they get of your spine. And a lot of them will actually take their attention off of the spine and start diagnosing inflammation in the intestines, which maybe this is the time that I bring up one of those videos again, because it was so funny. This guy, Dr. Justin, is one of my favorite content creators right now. He is a radiologist. Oh, he's not. Okay, on YouTube he goes by his full name, but I think I have a playlist of his stuff because this is funny. This is really, really funny. Where'd it go? Yeah, okay. Which one was it? I mean, I could pull up any one of these. Yeah, so we're gonna do this one. So if you remember, this is the radiologist that will go head to head with these chiropractors, and I love this guy. So here we go. And hold on, let me make sure I'm sharing the audio. Share screen, share tab. Okay, we are. Right, so it's this guy. Oh, it's muted. Hold on. Go back.
So I'm going to show you the labs and the x-ray of one of my patients that was struggling with non-alcoholic fatty liver. The thing I'll show you are his x-rays, and you can see back here there's so much inflammation built up within his intestines.
So close, Miss Chiropractor. See, this is actually poop. You can't see inflammation on an x-ray. That is poop. That is the lumbar spine. But thank you for trying.
Yeah. Oh, and here's another one. He's my favorite because, yeah, these chiropractors will try to show off how smart they are with diagnosing inflammation. And like Dr. Shafo was saying, you cannot see inflammation on an x-ray. That is all poop. And anybody that has been through medical school should be able to identify poop on an x-ray. That is something that we actually do use an x-ray for, is to identify severity of constipation of somebody in the hospital and to see if there's a bowel obstruction caused by constipation. So this is something very, very basic. Chiropractors are getting this wrong. Oh, and this one was another great example of where we saw chiropractors going wrong. So this is something extremely despicable of this particular chiropractor. So you see on the screen here, we have two different cases. We have the 8-year-old boy with eczema and sleep problems, and then a patient, unknown age and sex, with severe allergic reaction, itchy skin, and mold, which I don't know why a chiropractor is trying to diagnose mold. That's not at all in their scope. I don't know what they're thinking. It's a severe case of Dunning-Kruger for these people. But you'll see where this one got really despicable as well.
Oh, Bryce. You post two different videos. 8-year-old boy with eczema, sleep problems, patient with allergies, itchiness, and mold. You use the exact same x-ray. Did you not think we would notice?
I'm going to show you guys the labs and the x-rays of an 8-year-old little boy who came to my office with severe eczema. He had rashes all over his eyes. So the first thing we found is right in here, right where that small intestine meets the large intestine. He is really backed up, a lot of intestinal gas and inflammation, and same thing over here. You can see a lot of backed up stool. We can see some stomach inflammation up in here as well.
Just a burp.
I'm going to show you guys the labs and the x-rays of one of my patients who came in with severe and chronic allergies, and it seemed like they were actually So first thing we see when we start to analyze these x-rays.
So you look at that, it's the same x-ray that he used for two different people. So here's what really grinds my gears about chiropractors, which you probably heard in the full episode. And if you want to know more, you can watch the full episodes about all of these that we're talking about today. But the fact is, chiropractors are trained to lie. They are trained to be marketers. They're trained to scam people. So, with the advent of social media and especially TikTok, these people have gotten more ridiculous, but at least now they are being held more accountable, because it used to be that they would do this stuff just in their own office, or maybe have a blog post or something. But now they're posting the actual objective data to their TikToks, and you have legitimate doctors coming up and saying, well, actually, that is not true. This person is lying to you. And actually, this radiologist had another video posted recently about this chiropractic neurologist, which is a huge problem. You cannot be a neurologist and a chiropractor cannot be a neurologist unless that chiropractor goes to medical school, into a neurology residency, and possibly some fellowships. Like, that is a protected title. There is a board of chiropractic neurology that is trying to pretend that chiropractors can do this. It is a lie. There's nothing that a chiropractor is going to be able to do. Like, if you think about when a chiropractor says neurology, they probably mean like sciatica, and like, oh, we can pop your spine back into place, and then your nerves might feel better. Sure, that is technically within the scope of a regular neurologist. I mean, not the back popping part, but treating peripheral nerves. But the case complexity is a lot higher, and there's a kind of a standard of the type of patients that a neurologist is going to treat, and the case complexity that a neurologist is going to take. Like, they're taking stroke patients, they're taking like CRPS patients, they're taking like non-surgical management of brain tumors, etc. These are things that a chiropractor will never be able to touch. So trying to equate a chiropractor to a neurologist is incredibly dishonest. It causes people to delay care, because if they go to a chiropractor first when they're having a stroke, that's going to prevent them from getting to the hospital within a timely manner. And stroke management is time sensitive, especially if you're going to use thrombolytic therapy. So if you're going to use a blood thinner to break up the clot, then you need to get there within a certain amount of time. Usually it's less than 4 hours of symptom onset. So you have to be sure that people are getting to the right care at the right time. So this isn't something benign. The fact that chiropractors will say, well, we can just send people to the hospital afterwards, or we can send people to their primary care afterwards. No, they are not trained to identify the issues that are going to arise. And you need to be able to identify that before they come to you. You need to be able to say, like, we do not treat these symptoms, and you need to go to the hospital. So for all of those reasons, chiropractic has won the vote and beat the carnivore diet for the spot in the semifinals. So looking at the other side of the bracket here, let's start at the top, get into some of the easier ones, and then working our way into the more difficult ones. Yeah, and I'm seeing all the comments about how difficult like how difficult this vote is for the final two. And yeah, this one's really difficult today. But we have the monkeys. So I put just a short little thing on there, but the monkeys statement is referring to that time this past year in 2025, when that truck full of monkeys was sent from Tulane University, and that truck crashed on the highway. There were several monkeys that got out of the truck, and they were unfortunately euthanized. But there was this myth that these monkeys were infectious with hepatitis A, and some other stuff. Let me pull it up. The back did monkeys crash. It was like a whole list of things. Oh yeah, the truck carrying research monkeys that crashed in Mississippi And this was just really kind of a funny train wreck to watch, although it's very unfortunate for the monkeys. Um, this is not the one that is saying what the monkeys were supposedly infected with. Here we go. Potentially diseased monkeys. Why am I not able to find it? I think they. Maybe if I go to the Reddit page, they'll let me know what the diseases were. It was like hepatitis A, hepatitis C, and like a bunch of sexually transmitted diseases. But the concern was that these monkeys got out and that they were going to spread all of these illnesses to people um, around the country. And of course, concerns that the monkeys were aggressive, which of course is something to be concerned about when animals are on the loose. But it turned out that there was miscommunication between the university and the person driving the truck. And the allegations that the monkeys were infected actually came about from the person driving the truck and not from the university itself. So, yes, these were monkeys that were going to be used in infectious disease studies, but they were not yet infected. So the question was, would they be infected for research? I don't know. I think that was kind of the intent, but they were not infected at the time that they were being transported. The other thing is, it seems like the um, the person driving the truck was told to wear PPE when working with these monkeys because there was the risk of infections, and in fact, there is risk of a type of herpes virus that oh yeah, herpes was one of the things that they were allegedly infectious with, but the there is a risk of a fatal hepatitis, or not hepatitis, a fatal herpes infection that you can get from these rhesus monkeys. That just is a zoonotic transmission, um, not intentionally given to the monkeys, but can just be found in these monkeys in general, especially ones that are living in close proximity to other monkeys. So, reasonably so, if you're going to be handling wildlife, it is important that you take the necessary precautions for yourself. So, it sounds like the university had told this person, hey, please wear PPE when working with the monkeys. And so, this person had thought, oh, risk of infection means that these are infectious. So, I can see multiple different ways where this miscommunication may have happened, but that was the whole monkey incident listed there. Rhesus monkey, the not Reese's peanut butter cup monkeys. That would be a different situation. But yeah, no, it was a new development later on in the story, and it was definitely kind of changed the situation. But it's the same thing we get with a lot of cop stories. Like, they hear one thing and they intend on just anchoring on whatever they already believe instead of taking on a different position after new information. So, law enforcement, we got to work on that. We got to work on our reading comprehension skills, our listening skills, and our ability to take in new information and not anchor on something that we already thought was true. And that's true in all of law enforcement. That's something that y'all are really, really bad at. Monkeys, the rhesus monkey situation, we put on the bracket apart, like across from the wellness industry consumerism issue. And the thing with this one, the consumerism part isn't necessarily a myth, right? Like, this is something that is just true. There is an issue in this country with wellness being seen as a commodity to be bought and sold. And so that's what that whole episode was right before Christmas, was this idea that self-care and healthcare, medications, also mental health care, are all reserved for rich people. Nowadays, it's kind of seen as a status symbol, especially now that insurance rates are skyrocketing, increasing by like 50% for a lot of people. So, healthcare, which should be a right, if we are all people and we are all equal in our status, then we should all be granted the ability and the access to sustain our lives. That is something that is very, very important to me as a value. But the industry does not think so. It is making the system to where only a select few can afford to manage their stress appropriately. As if you think about it, therapy is very expensive. If you're going to go to therapy, you have to take time off of work, time off of school. You have to have transportation a lot of the time. You have to have insurance a lot of the time. So for a lot of people, this stuff isn't very realistic. So you have this combination of a society where um like overdoing it with work hours has become the norm. Exploiting human bodies for labor has become such a norm where you're pushing people beyond their physical and mental capabilities, and then you're going to lock any treatment for that behind a paywall. And that seems very intentional to keep people poor, keep the rich rich and the poor poor. And it is causing a lot of really, really bad outcomes. Something else that we discussed in that particular episode was um, like influencers and social media and how this is impacting our self care and our mental health. For example, we see everyone trying to sell something to you. Everything is an ad. You have ads for sleep monitoring apps, sleep monitoring devices. You've got stuff on your iPhones now, on your Apple Watches. People are trying to sell you Fitbits. These ideas that you need to track all these things in your health when really the motivation is these influencers getting paid. So a lot of that episode was dialing back and saying, what can we do to improve our self-care, our mental health care, etc.? What can we do without having to spend any money? How can we deconsumerize, decommoditize, if you will, this self-care industry? So while the whole overconsumption thing isn't the myth, the society around it tells us a lot of claims that end up being the myths in this one. So, out of those two options, the chat had decided that the overconsumption and the systemic damage done by consumerism outweighs the damage done by that monkey incident. So, we had a vote for that one of 94% who voted for the wellness industry consumerism to be the worst, and 6% said that the truck full of monkeys was worse. So, moving on to the next round for that, we had the consumerism facing off with peptide therapy. And someone did comment in the poll that, well, peptides aren't a myth. Well, correct. Peptide therapy isn't a myth, and there may be some significant applications clinically for injectable peptide therapies. However, what we were really learning is number one, the word peptide is being used in a way that is ambiguous and not clear about what the content actually is, like what they're actually selling and what the results are expected to be. So we had one company that is an MLM called what was it called? Make Wellness, that was selling these peptide capsules and a 30-day supply for about $150. And this, when we looked at the ingredients of that, it really was just bean powder. It was bean powder and like vitamins and stuff, and specifically fava bean powder, which not everybody can have fava beans. Fava beans generate a lot of free radicals in the human body, and we have enzymes that can help process those free radicals and make them less toxic to us. However, some people are missing that enzyme or missing appropriate amount of that enzyme and cannot process that amount of free radicals at one time. So those people with a G6PD deficiency cannot have fava beans because it will cause them to go into oxidative stress and probably be hospitalized. So that was the one side of this. The other side of it was injectable peptide therapy. And those were things that were largely growth hormone analogs. So similar to anabolic steroids, although they are peptides and not steroids. Steroids are cholesterol based compounds, and peptides are the kind of building blocks of proteins. So, like, proteins are polypeptides, and peptides are made of amino acids. So they have slightly different structure. I can't even say slightly. They have different structures completely, but the effects can be very similar between these growth hormone analogs and anabolic steroids because of the fact that they are simulating human growth hormone. So with the injectable peptide side, we have, again, primarily Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, RFK Jr. advocating for these to be just commonplace, sold, that you can just buy them and do them at your own risk, whether or not you have adequate information to know what you're risking and gaining. My concession on the peptide issue was that with the injectable peptides, I'm not going to sit here and say that there's never an appropriate use. I'm not going to say that we will never use these because I could absolutely be wrong in that. The data is just very, very early. The studies are very, very early. And the issue is that a lot of clinics that are selling these injectable peptides are bypassing the regulatory systems meant to keep people safe. And so if these peptides go through adequate testing and the data comes out that says these are safe, these are effective, here is the list of clinical of conditions that may receive benefit from these medications, then absolutely. Because if you remember, there are a variety of peptide medications. We're already using some peptide medications like GLP-1s, are peptide-based medications. And again, this is where the word peptide can be used in a variety of different ways, because in that case, we're talking about GLP-1 agonists and not growth hormone agonists, but they're made of the same material. Peptides are the building block of these medications. So I remember GLP-1s coming onto the market and being a new thing when I was in medical school. A lot of people were very skeptical at the time. And since then, they have ballooned into a very, very big industry, and albeit a very big industry that is helping a lot of people. We can have our debates about should celebrities be using this for cosmetic reasons. My take on that is that this is a bodily autonomy issue. If somebody wants to use these therapies for cosmetic reasons and they're an adult and they can consent to what's being done with their body, power to them. Do I think that there's potentially harm in the narrative that being skinnier is ideal and that being skinnier is a goal that should be achieved by any means necessary? That's where I have kind of an issue with this, is why are we making these cosmetic decisions? Can we address body shaming in our society and make this less of a thing people need to do for that reason? People should be making decisions because it's the right thing for them, and for them to be authentically themselves and to be healthier versions of themselves. But with that being said, there are also a lot of people that are probably becoming unhealthy from using these GLP-1 medications because they're doing it and not eating as much and probably need to be eating more. So there's some nuance here with Ozempic and Wegovy and all that. But for the most part, those medications are helping a lot of people. And I do think that they they have a significant place in medicine. So that's kind of the caveat here. I will accept that peptide therapy could be beneficial, but we're not there yet, and it is wrong and dangerous to sell it as if it has passed those regulatory measures when they have not. So that's why peptide therapy has made it onto this list. Although in the vote, we saw that wellness industry consumerism, just being that whole systemic issue, still won the vote at 95%, and then 5% went to peptide therapy. All right. So I'm gonna look back at the chat poll and see where we're at. So now we're at 60% for transphobic medical education and 40% for vaccines cause autism on the horizontal side, and still 100% for anti-trans on the vertical side. So keep getting your votes in. Keep getting your votes in. We will announce the winner at the end of this episode. But back to the bracket. All right, so down here at the bottom, we have some of our favorite myths. And this one was a really, really difficult one for our voters. So the way I have it listed, it says vaccines. Vaccines are not the myth here. The myth is that vaccines cause autism. That is the myth that we have put on the board today. And I don't feel like I have to go too far into this one, because most of the people here in the audience, I believe, are in favor of vaccines and understand that the propaganda against vaccines is just that. It is narrative control. It is propaganda. So this myth started, the myth has been going on ever since the dawn of vaccines. And I have a presentation on this, that I have some anti-vax propaganda from the 1800s, the early 1900s. But really where this started getting super, super popular was with the Wakefield study in, I believe it was 1992 or 1998, in the 1990s. Andrew Wakefield published a study with 12 kids trying to claim that there was a link between the MMR vaccine and autism, and also that there's a link between autism and gastrointestinal distress. That article, or that paper, was retracted from the journal it was published in for a variety of reasons. There were extremely unethical practices in how they conducted the study. They had falsified their data. They cherry picked their data. They didn't use adequate sampling procedures. So they had high amounts of selection bias. They handpicked the children ahead of time who already had those issues and then did the study, which shows they weren't honestly looking for the truth, and that they were just wanting to do the study to make the proof, as RFK Jr. said very recently, that they just wanted that narrative to be pushed and did not care how they went about it. So a few of the myths related to vaccines that we debunked in that particular episode is that ethyl mercury and methyl mercury are not the same thing. And even that argument doesn't even hold water anymore, because thimerosal, which is the ingredient that contained ethyl mercury, is very rarely ever used in vaccines now. So the big issue with the arguments ultimately comes down to a shifting of the goalpost, because you have these people that say vaccines are bad, or at least especially the MMR vaccine is bad because the MMR vaccine was shown to cause autism. I'm like, okay, well, we don't actually see a link between the MMR vaccine and autism. And they're like, oh, well, no, it's actually the thimerosal in the vaccines. Well, okay, we have other vaccines that have thimerosal in it, and we don't, like, So you're saying that it's not the MMR vaccine specifically, it's this thing. So we test it out and we find out that the thimerosal does not have a causal relationship between that and autism. Like, okay, well, it's not that. And even we take that out of there, we take them out of the vaccines, and people are still up in arms. Like, oh, well, no, it's not just the mercury, it's also aluminum. Like, okay, so you get aluminum in your body from eating and drinking. Like, that's the majority of aluminum in your body. And you consume way more of that on a daily basis than you get in all of your vaccines combined. So what about that? And like, oh, okay, well, no, it's not just the aluminum, it's how early you're getting these vaccines. Like, it's when you're getting them as a baby. And it's the amount of vaccines you're getting as a baby. It's like, okay, well, you're just shifting shifting the goalpost. And they ask them, then why is it a problem that you're getting these vaccines at an early age? And then they start circling back into mercury, aluminum, and all that stuff. So not really consistent argumentation on that. And of course, RFK Jr. is still doing a lot of work to try to perpetuate this myth. But of course, vaccines cause autism is on the list here today, and made it pretty far, all the way to the finals round. But we paired up vaccines up against natural cancer cures. And that this is especially despicable. We had organizations of doctors, like actual medical doctors and DOs. We had some less legitimate doctors, like naturopaths, homeopaths, chiropractors, who set up these clinics in Mexico to try to treat cancer. We have Facebook groups that are trying to peddle cancer cures. We got MLMs that are trying to peddle cancer cures, all trying to take advantage of people who are desperate. They're desperate for answers and they're willing to try anything. But unfortunately, cancer isn't a one size fits all thing. There are a variety of cancers out there with a variety of different mechanisms. All of them boil down to DNA mutations, and especially if you get just the right mutations in the right places at the right times, you get cancer, and eventually you can get metastatic cancer if you get the right mutations in addition to that. So to say that you could have things that just prevent or cure cancer, it is a very, very tall claim. And for the most part, these remedies are not going to do anything for people with cancer. And all it does is it takes their money. Plain and simple. I wish that there were better ways to address cancer treatment. But that is absolutely not the way. And something else that we dug into in that particular episode was the board of, was it naturopathic oncology or something, which claimed that the goal was to like provide alternative therapies in addition to conventional cancer treatment. So, for example, using plants or natural remedies to reduce nausea for cancer patients, or to help them with their diet and their nutritional deficiencies while they go through cancer therapies, which sounds like a great idea. It's a concept I'm not necessarily entirely opposed to. However, I don't think naturopaths are the people to be doing this. In this case, you're really treating naturopathy like a religious support person. For example, like if you have a pastor that's going to help you process your spiritual distress, if you will, the pastor's not actually helping your mental illness. Right. And in fact, it's a problem when pastors claim to be therapists and go outside of their scope to provide any kind of uh, medical or psychological treatment. They'll kind of disguise that as counseling. For some people, they desire that. They desire that pastoral component. I don't agree with it. But in healthcare, we have to be as unbiased as possible to meeting people's religious needs, my job is to treat their body, and I need to be treating them with respect and allowing them to practice their religion as they see fit. Um, so in that, people who want to have a pastor to talk to, I can't really object to that in a professional setting. It's a similar thing with naturopaths and chiropractors now. It's the people that are going to be utilizing those alternative therapies are going to do so whether you like it or not. And it ends up being more helpful to kind of let these people go to their naturopath as long as they also come to see you and you can still manage their medications. Um, so on the surface, it seems like an okay thing, but there are better ways to handle dietary deficiencies during chemotherapy. And pretty much the best one for that is a dietitian. Like if you have to choose between a registered dietitian and a naturopath, the dietitian is actually trained and licensed to provide nutrition guidance. Something that naturopaths will do frequently is they'll blame doctors and they'll say, well, medical doctors don't know enough about nutrition, so therefore I'm the better one for it. Well, I'm going to argue that naturopaths don't learn enough of anything. They are not sufficiently trained in science. They're learning pseudoscience, and even the science classes that they take are at an intro level. The GPA that you need to have to get into naturopathic college is like a 2.5. So you're taking kind of the bottom of the barrel candidates who likely couldn't get into medical school. I'm not saying that's all of them, but you're taking people who have demonstrated they have not mastered their prereqs. They have not understood, number one, have not understood how to study, which you need to do if you're going to be a clinical practitioner. You have to know how to study. You have to know how to research. You have to know how to critically think. And all of that is tested on the MCAT, on the medical boards, and all throughout medical school. So the reason why you have such strict prereqs to go into those fields is because they need to know that you have the capability to do it. If you're taking pre-med prereqs and you're getting a 2.5 GPA, I have some concerns about your ability to handle the course load of becoming a physician and handling those academic responsibilities. That being said, they're going to claim that the education is the same as a medical doctor, but with more nutrition. I'm willing to bet their nutrition education is really not much more than a physician's, probably even less. So yeah, and they're so anti-pharmaceutical that they'll immediately disregard those experts. Yeah, it's a huge problem. So when you have people like that have now set up a board of naturopathic oncology, they are clearly trying to pass themselves off as oncologists, even though legally they're not saying that they're oncologists. They're saying they work with oncologists. But in practice, they're going beyond that, and their language is vague enough to where you don't catch that they're actually making medical claims and giving bad medical advice. So that's where the cancer cures stuff makes it onto this list. And the poll back when we asked about this one was a 71-29 split. So we had 71% who voted for vaccines cause autism, and then 29% voted for natural cancer cures. So vaccines move into the next round along with measles. And again, I have to clarify because I just had to use a certain amount of text to fit this bracket image. But we're referring to the myth that measles is a routine childhood illness. And of course, this is something that is perpetuated by the anti-vax movement, and especially in more recent times by RFK Jr. himself, claiming that, there really is no measles epidemic in the United States. This isn't a problem. People are just going to get over it. And actually, there was I don't know how recent this was, but there was a guest on the Joe Rogan podcast. And of course, we cannot trust Joe Rogan as far as we can drop kick him, but Joe Rogan was making some statements about chickenpox, but didn't recognize that he was talking about chickenpox and called it measles. Is that this was the thing that we all got as children, and we'd have meetups with other kids that were sick so that we would catch it and so that we would be immune later on. That is talking about chickenpox, which I also don't think people should be getting without the vaccine. Like, I think we should be utilizing the varicella vaccines as we have them, because shingles is a problem. Shingles is absolutely painful and can lead to blindness. If you get shingles on your face, there's a real risk to your eyesight if you get shingles in your eyeball. So definitely not something to play with either. But measles, sure, you can get immunity from getting the measles. However, there are significant risks that you have to weigh. And one of them is that the risk that you will not get immunity, and not even just in the regular sense that with any illness, there's a risk that you're not going to get enough of the illness to get immunity, or just that your immune system will not catch up, will not produce enough of a response to build immunity. Another potential is that you get the disease and die, and therefore cannot build the immunity. So the question is, sure, it's also possible that you may not get immunity from the vaccine, but there's more of a chance that you will get immunity from the vaccine than from a natural infection, and with less risk. So something else that we discussed that was a risk of the measles virus is that measles causes immune amnesia. So it binds to your immune cells and causes them to like die off and forget. Like, so essentially you forget the infections that you've had. So you have to get revaccinated, and you're probably not immune to the measles that you got. So you had to go through that horrible illness and the risk of dying, which the majority of measles deaths are from secondary pneumonias, especially in children and elderly people, which is a horrible way to die. But another one is encephalitis, which is inflammation of the nervous system, including the brain, which can be fatal, can build up pressure in the skull and cause you to die. And something else that can happen is that it doesn't even just affect people with weak immune systems. There are people who die from SSPE, which is a neurological complication, fatal brain swelling that occurs a decade after you get the illness. So if you get measles, you can develop this 7 to 10 years down the line and die anyway. So one of the issues that RFK Jr. falls into is the idea that if you're healthy and you catch an illness, then you're not going to die. You're not going to get sick. You're just going to be able to fight it off. So this is victim blaming, for one. It says that if you get sick, it is your fault. It's giving into terrain theory and is a denial of germ theory. It's saying that the germ isn't the problem. It is your body that is the problem. But then along with that, like, it's giving a false confidence to people who may actually die down the road from this preventable illness. And this measles pandemic is getting worse and worse and worse. There are children dying, there are adults dying, and this does not need to be this way. This does not at all need to be this way. So, of course, measles myths have made it onto this list. However, vaccines, as you can see, vaccines cause autism has moved on to the semifinals on that side. So we had a 70-30 split for this one. We had 70% that voted for vaccines cause autism, and we had 30% voting for measles is a routine illness. So vaccines moving up into the next round. The semifinals on the right side, we have consumerism and vaccines. And since we kind of went into our little shallow dive of those already, I will just read out the numbers. We had it 82% voted for vaccines cause autism being the worst, and 18% voting for wellness industry consumerism being the worst. Both of these are systemic issues. One of them was agreed upon as being the worst of the two, putting vaccines cause autism into the finals. And here we are, folks. This is the moment. This is the moment where we crown the winner for the Wall of Shame 2025 winner of the worst medical myth of the year. And welcome to the chat, Sketch Draw. I don't think I've seen you before. Welcome in. Also, Marag, I don't know if I have seen you in here either. Lots of newer people here today. It's good to see everybody showing up for this. But here we go. I have to have a little bit of monster first before we get into this. I don't even need to do a drum roll because we already know the results from the side chat. Actually, wow, this was a turn on what we expected earlier on in the show. We have vaccines cause autism is the worst medical myth of 2025, and with transphobic medical education in second place. So congratulations to RFK Jr., Donald Trump, Dr. Oz, and Andrew Wakefield for making the list as the worst medical myth of 2025. So with that, this is a shorter show today, as this is more of a kind of recap episode. But I have a lot of plans for the upcoming year. We're going to have more medical myths to unravel. And I actually am going to film a couple of pre-recorded videos to release probably in the next couple weeks, because Donald Trump has released a bit of a confession, if you will, that he is not taking his aspirin as prescribed. So we're going to talk a little bit about aspirin, what it is, and why aspirin is a bit unique as a medication. Most medications have a dose response curve, like we've talked about in like the Tylenol causes autism stream, where if Tylenol were to cause autism, we would expect to see higher rates of autism with higher doses of the medication. Or in other medication context, you have, when you have an increased dose of medication, you get a stronger effect of whatever effect that drug may have. Aspirin is special. So aspirin at low dose is a completely different medication than aspirin at high dose. And so I'm going to explain why that is, what this means for Donald Trump, and getting into the nitty-gritty of the biochemistry behind it. So stick around. You'll see an alert on the channel when that shows up, as long as you have the alerts notifications set, and you should click the bell, set those notifications to all, so you know when I'm going live and also when I'm releasing new content. So that is something that you all can look forward to. We are going to have more trivia this upcoming year. We had some trivia last night. It was a super fun time. Every Friday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, audience is welcome to play. We do trivia, we play Jackbox, all that jazz. And then on Saturday, of course, we have medical myths. Next week, I believe I'm going to cover, I think I'm going to cover alkaline water. I think that was the next one on my list, because that's kind of a fun topic, unless RFK Jr. gives me something else to talk about. But either way, we'll be here next week covering some more of the awful things that might make this bracket next year. Who knows? And then on Sundays, so tomorrow and every Sunday after that, a group of fellow heathens plays Star Wars: The Old Republic. And right now, that group is Ollie, Jamie the Blind Limey, Jamie's roommate, and Eli. We're going to try to start a guild, so join us on Sundays if you want to get in on that. Of course, watch the Transatlantic Call-In show on Thursdays and Talk Heathen on Sundays. And that's pretty much all of my updates on that. Oh, and Holy Spirits. Don't forget Holy Spirits. Holy Spirits season 1 is over. We're taking a little bit of a break to kind of strategize for season 2 and how we're going to make that happen. So there is no Holy Spirits today. We are releasing clips and shorts. But hopefully we'll get you all a season 2 in the near future. But please feel free to leave your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments section. Let me know what medical myths you want me to talk about. Do you have any medical questions? Not specifically about you. I can't do any personalized questions, but I can talk about, if you have a question about what does this medication do, or what is this thing I hear about in the news, all that stuff. Put those in the comments section so I can start planning some future episodes. If there's anything that you want me to talk about in particular, we will try to get to that. And thank you so much to everybody who supported me over the past year. It's been pretty rough. I didn't mention this earlier in the stream, but I am officially out of the military now. So right now, this is kind of my primary income until I go back to a residency program. So I really do appreciate the support. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell. All of it goes a super, super long way. But it's been a great ride. We've made some great new friends this year, built a great community this year, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everyone.